Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, koutou rā e whakarongo mai nei ki tēnei o ngā hōtaka o Koniahi Kōrero. O tira ki koutou rā e mātakitaki mai ana, mai i pukamata ki tēnei o ngā pāpā o mataora me ki, i tēnei o ngā rā. Nā o mātou te waimari i tēnei rā e te whānau, kei te ki te koutou, ko wai kei taputaa, aira, ko wai atu, ko Bibi ki etahi, ko Bonita ki etahi atu, ko whaine Bonita, ko Bonita Bigham o tira, ai, e te whānau. We can see who's sitting next to me, and she's here to unmuddy some of the waters around the 3 waters reform. Nā reira, kei te tuku ngā mihi ki koe e Bibi, mō te whae wā, ki te noho tahi kia tātou i tēnei rā. Nā reira, ka waiho ki a koe, ki te whakamoho atu ki te katoa, ko wai koe, no hea koe, aua āhuatanga katoa. Nā reira, e te tuakana, kei a koe te wā.
Tēnā koe e te whanaunga Te Aorangi, nōku te honore, tēnei kōrero tai kia koe, kia koutou i tēnei wā, ko Bonita Bigham tōku ingoa, ara ko Bibi, me rā atu ingoa tāku. He uri au mō ngā ruahine ki tēnei taha o te maunga ki Taranaki ki Te Tonga, ko ngā ruahine te iwi, ko ngā titu te apu, ko waiokura te marae. Ko ene waito, Josie Bigham tōku whaine, koia tētahi o te whānau rei, ara ko e nuinga e tihi o atu e waku whanaunga rei, tēnei taha. And ko Jeff Bigham, tētahi tangata Pākehā tōku pāpā. So, ko au tētahi o ngā Bighams katoa i tēnei taha o te maunga hoki. Ki te rātu taha o te maunga, ki Te Awa, ko Ngāti Tāwhirikura, Ngāti Rahiri me Ngāti Te Ngā Hapu. E mahi au i te taha o aku whanaunga ki Ngāti Tāwhirikura i runga i te trust i reira. He pai ngā mahi i huri noa te maunga o ngā iwi o ngā hapu o ngā whānau. Ko au tētahi tamaiti o te maunga, nō reira tēnā tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe. Well, gosh, there you go. Ana kei te mihi ki o tātou wakapapa, ki wainganui tātou katoa. Gee, yes, she does stretch from one end to the other, e te whānau. Oh man, yeah, we might be able to talk about some of the cool stuff that Tāwhirikura is doing at the moment. Also, Kazi, because God, I'm loving watching the progress there too. But for now, before we get on another tangent, or stick to one tangent for now, and that is the 3 waters reform. And it's cool because I spoke to Iao the other day, but we didn't really get right into it. Actually, I think we might not have even got into it at all by the end of our kōrero. And I have been trying to find someone who will talk to everybody about it, because there's a lot of information out there. And I think the other day when you commented on my post that I'd put up, it actually sunk in right then and there when you talked about it being actually about the infrastructure. And so literally the pipes and the concrete, it's not really about anything else. But of course, from that comes other things, I guess. Right. So what can you tell us about it in regards to the pipes and the concrete, the infrastructure, how it looks today, and how did the 3 waters reform even come about?
Right, ka pai. And ngā tika tō kōrero, for us as Māori, you can't separate out kaupapa from each other. So if it's wai, it's all about the wai. It's about the sanctity of the wai, the mauri of the wai, the mana of the wai. It's ability to nurture and look after us as tangata whenua, as tangata tiriti in all of our communities. So it's really a different concept for us to be thinking about why, other than as we know it as the nurturing element that we all need love and respect as ngai Māori. But the 3 waters reform currently in the news, and that Minister Mahuta and the government are looking to deliver, is about the infrastructure. So it's about all the pipes, and it's about all the water plants and things like that that get the water to our whare, that get the water to our homes. We turn on the tap, there's water. It's about all of those pipes and concrete things that get the ownership of those and the delivery of those systems and the maintenance of those systems and potentially the renewal of those systems that the Three Waters reform is about. So currently councils around the motu, and at the moment there's 67 councils around the motu, and we're not talking about regional councils who deal with water quality, we're talking about district and city councils who deal with delivering the water around our rohe. So over the years, councils' jobs have been to, make sure the pipes are okay, make sure that the water gets to your whare okay, make sure that they let you know if something goes wrong with that water infrastructure. A township might have to boil their water because there's been something happen, contamination of the water supply, etc. So that's what councils' roles have been forever. And this review was kick-started by what happened in Havelock North a few years ago when there was a major pollution of the water system, and thousands of people were really ill in Havelock North, some of them seriously ill, and what the official statistics now attribute to about at least 4 people dying from the contamination of that water in Te Tonga. So that's really what triggered the Crown to step in and say, okay, so that was a major event. They looked at the delivery system of water across the motu, and Minister Mahuta, in her role as local government minister, did some research, looked around the world for models that potentially could work here in Aotearoa. And this is where this whole Three Waters kaupapa kōrero has come from, is around how in Aotearoa does water get supplied to our communities, get supplied to our homes? How do we make sure and ensure that it's safe? And how do we ensure that it's affordable moving forward? So the interesting thing for the local government sector is that councils, for at least the last 10 years that I've been in local government, it's coming up 12 years, 11 years now, I've been in local government, and in all that time, the message that I've heard across the whole sector, across councils, across the motu, is about how they can't afford to do the major work that needs to be done to upgrade their infrastructure, to make it safe. And you see in the news, there's lots of places like Wellington, for example, pipes bursting all over the place, things like that. And Wellington isn't the only council that's got some huge issues, and that's a lot of the reason because of not enough investment in that infrastructure over the years. Many councils are faced with huge bills trying to think about how they're going to pay for it, hence asking the Crown to step in. So the Crown has stepped in, and that's where this has all come from. So whānau, it's not about who owns the water, it's not about water rights, which is a kaupapa kōrero anō, and a really important one for Ngāi Māori to stay involved in and stay at the forefront of. It's about how that infrastructure gets the way to us and our communities and make sure it's safe. So yeah, koira, that's trying to separate out that kaupapa.
Yeah, so it looks at the stormwater, wastewater, and our drinking water.
Yeah.
Becky. Okay, so it's not actually the regional councils. See, I've learned another thing today too. Okay, ka pai. And like you said, this is something that councils have been asking for a long time. So for those of you who are listening, if you don't know Bonita's background, she has been in local government. She's a councillor for South Taranaki District Council for how long was that, Kaz?
Oh, three terms, so 9 years, and now I'm on the community board with Charlie, and you had a good kōrero with her a little while back. But also for the last 7 years been heavily involved at national level. So I also chair the National Collective of Māori in Local Government, Te Maruata. Whanaunga Dinny's been a part of that too since he came on as a councillor. other Māori throughout the sector, just so that we're there to awhi each other, to look after each other, and so that we strategically, as Māori in the sector, in the local government space, can strategically put our māngai in different places of influence. You know, if we know that a whanaunga in South Waikato's got the skills in a certain area that the government's looking at or asking for help with, we can say, look, Te Maruata's got a representative. We really want that person to be there in that space. Far north, down south, you know, it's about strategically putting ourselves in there. So yeah, that's where I'm sitting, and also on the National Council for Local Government New Zealand, who's been taking some hits for trying to ensure. It's a bit like, you know, a bit like Māori. We want to be at the table, and sometimes we have to take the hits when we're the messenger, to make sure that we've got that discussion with government. But it's an interesting space because there's so much work to do for our people.
So what's your mahi been in regards to the Three Waters? You've done a bit of, there's been a little bit of involvement, eh? Probably a lot.
So, well, really in our role as Te Maruata, in the first instance, was to find someone within our whānui who had a lot of experience and had been working in the waters space. We nominated Baden Barber, who's a district councillor in Hastings, to be our māngai in the Three Waters working group. So there was a group from local government and a group from the Crown, DIA officials, etc., Minister Mahuta's representatives, who negotiated how we were going to work through the whole Three Waters reform. And it's been a new thing for local government, because like us, like Māori, we were used to being told how things were going to be done to us and just get in line, and this is the process. Yeah. So for us, it was ensuring that Baden was there to give a Māori perspective within the whole local government perspective. So my role in National Council has been to help deliberate over the information that's come back about that process, just to make sure that, you know, when local government goes into that space and our Māori voice is also in that space, that it's done, we hope, and with goodwill. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, the minister's had nothing but goodwill in the process, although that's not looking like how it's rolling out in the wider public. So I think that's a real shame, which is why I'm keen to try and dispel some of the myths around this whole kaupapa.
Yeah, so dispelling myths. Okay, so the one that racks me up is the whole thing over privatisation and Māori being involved because they want to own the water. Like, how far further from the truth could that be, Kaz?
That is way further from, that is way far from the truth. The minister's made it very clear, and the legislation makes it very clear that this is not privatisation of those water assets. Councils still own those water assets, which will be looked after by a governance board of people with experience in, you know, managing. Because let's face it, some of our councils haven't managed those assets well at all, which is why they're in the hole that they're in. You know, South Taranaki has done a really good job, a reasonable job, especially with the drinking water. But there are also there could be issues around stormwater and wastewater in the future for South Taranaki as well. So there will be hardly any council in the country who's done a perfect job in terms of maintaining their water systems. What the minister is proposing is a movement to a collective, and you will have seen on TV all the adverts, which have simplified things down incredibly, but, you know, looking to go to bigger collectives of ownership models, and, as I mentioned, governed by a board of experienced people who will be made up of, under the minister's proposal, 50% iwi, 50% Māori. So how that gets worked out has yet to be decided, but one of the things I found really interesting is the number of councils who are coming out and saying, oh, but we've got such and such number of iwi, and we've got such and such number of iwi, and this model won't give them fair representation. Well, hello, do our iwi have any representation on how that water is managed now, and have they ever? So I just think it's, you know, it's kind of ironic that some of the councils are pulling that kind of kōrero out when there's never been any effort to involve them in any of that discussion in the past anyway. So, yeah, beware the red herrings, whānau. It's always interesting to note that sort of stuff comes out. So when I looked at that model and I heard that kōrero, I thought, fantastic. How awesome is that Māori will finally get to be voices at the decision-making table in terms of these, and yes, they are mega entities, but Māori will be there as of right, as mana whenua, as tangata whenua, and however that representation of those members on that board, well, that's, you know, for Māori to decide. And the whole thing around, can we trust each other to think that, okay, someone from an Aorangi, someone from, I don't know, I can't even remember what the boundaries are, but Hastings, will they look after us as Māori? You know, so we've got to be a bit more, I think, open-minded, a bit more trusting, and we're doing it here in Taranaki. We're looking for waka representation these days rather than, you know, in some instances where it's appropriate. Yep. Trusting that the people that we put there are going to look after all our interests. So I'd like to think that that's something that we will carry through if this reform ends up going through, that we look at the best people to represent our interests, not necessarily making sure all of our interests are represented by our own person, if that makes sense.
Because what's the alternative? What's the alternative if this reform doesn't go through?
Well, the alternative is status quo, and councils having to figure out how they're going to afford to do all this work that needs to be done. One of the motivators for the Three Waters reform, with the government stepping in as they are, is that they will be able to borrow more money to do the work, because the entities are larger. Then there will be economies of scale whereby that they'll get better rates for doing the, you know, ordering bulk work, rather than each council trying to negotiate their own contracts and not perhaps getting the best rate possible. You know, it's like, was it binning? You know, the kai used to be cheap because they did it in bulk and there was no flash, this, that, and the other thing. So that's the theory of a very simplified, example of that kind of thinking. Councils have limited ways in which they can raise funds up to a certain debt level within their councils, and many councils are already, you know, pretty much tapping that limit. So any thought of being able to borrow more money is just unaffordable. And councils also have very few ways of raising money other than rates. So if they were to go, if councils did have to go and invest a few $1 billion in their Three Waters infrastructure, they've got no other tools to do that other than upping everyone's rates. And so, you know, there's lots of pros and cons, but one of the biggest things that councils are pushing back now is that they believe that the model and the numbers that the Crown has supplied are flawed. So that's where councils are now starting to say, well, we don't believe what you're proposing is accurate, and that's the feedback that they've been given to the Crown. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how this all pans out in the next few weeks, once the Crown receives all the feedback from councils and starts working through those, that kōrero.
So when I first read it, which was some time ago, it was sort of split into different types of entities in regards to the drinking water. So the council would be seen as a supplier. Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere along the way, because it's been a long time. Some farms could be seen as suppliers, schools could be seen as suppliers, and marae could be seen as suppliers. Can you flesh that out a bit? Sure.
So that again is a whole different line that sits alongside the Three Waters review. What used to happen with water drinking standards is that the Ministry of Health used to be responsible for monitoring those standards, and it was a bit haphazard around the country and wasn't well done. So the local government sector also asked the Crown to come up with one way and one entity that would regulate water drinking standards. So it meant that instead of there being, varying rates of compliance across the country around water and drinking water in particular, which is what caused the Havelock North raru and those mati over there, the Crown has put in place an organisation called Toi Māori, which, regardless of whether these reforms come through or not, whether these new mega entities come into play or not, is the new water regulator. So Toi Māori will be speaking with councils, and you're right, anyone who supplies water to more than 2 homes will be considered to be a water supplier. So a drinking water supplier. So Toi Māori's job is to work with all of those people in all of those organisations, including marae, who supply drinking water, to make sure that they meet a certain standard that's safe for everyone. So there should be no one else, and I've been sort of growled a bit for using this terminology, but it's something that I firmly believe in. I don't think there should be anyone else in Aotearoa who dies from drinking water. That should be safe for everyone to everyone, no matter where they go, wherever their whānau are, water should be safe. So that's something that's going to be rolling out over the next few years. Toi Māori will obviously start with the biggest drinking suppliers, the councils, the mega council like Auckland and Wellington, to make sure that they're up to par. But along that line too, a parallel work stream will be trying to get out to our marae and our whānau and all of those people who are considered to be smaller suppliers, so that in 4 years' time, they're all ready to be regularly monitored and start saying, yep, we're up to scratch. And for some marae, that might just mean putting a filter somewhere in their system. It might mean UV filtration, UV exposure. So there's, it's not potentially going to cost lots of money, but also there is funding available for those kinds of upgrades as well. So it's not just trying to lump something out there, throw something out there, telling our people this is what you have to do. Good luck. This is about, okay, ka pai whānau, we want you all to be safe. We want all of your whānau to be safe when they come home. We want all of your tamariki and mokopuna to make sure that they go away from the marae being healthy and happy. How can we make sure that, you're happy with your water supply? Get someone out there to have a look at it. What do we need to do? Ka pai, this is the solution. See you whenever the next check-in is, and let us know if anything goes wrong in the meantime. So Toi Māori is really important. And I've been appointed to the Māori committee, which helps advise that too with my local government knowledge. So exciting mahi. It's exciting mahi all around, and I'm really excited that the minister is able to put Māori voices at such important and critical positions within these organisations. Toi Māori, you may have heard of Te Mana o Te Wai. That phrase come up. Now that's an interesting one. Te Mana o Te Wai, that's the foundation for Toi Māori to be engaging with our people on. There's some discussion and some debate around who gets to define that, the mana o te wai. And this is when regional councils come into play, because they're the ones that will be looking at the standards of water that go out to our people. And councils are, because they're publicly owned basically by the people, are quite risk adverse. So they want definitions. They want to know that anything they do is not going to be challenged in court. They want to know that they're looking at the path of least resistance. So some councils are nervous about what that means. What does Te Mana o Te Wai mean? And then there are others of us who are saying, well, Te Mana o Te Wai will mean whatever the iwi want it to mean. And it may be different between hapu within their rohe and their catchment, their water catchment, their section of an awa. It may be different for them. So that freaks them out totally. But it's worth it because, for the first time, there's the opportunity for us to start defining, and especially those people like Tuhiao who have been working in this kind of space all their lives and have all this knowledge, and for mātauranga Māori to start coming to the fore as as the foundation and the basis for those kinds of definitions.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to touch on that too, because we see this all the time, right? So the infrastructure is shot, basically. So it's time to change that. Of course, that doesn't come easily. It's coming by way of a whole different reform. Councils probably thought it was going to look like this, but actually it's going to look like this. So, years and years of we need more help, it's come, but not like that. We can't ever look like that for whatever reasons, people have their reasons, organisations have their reasons. And then what gets me is that somewhere along that spectrum, there has been the Māori voice who has been saying the whole time, don't do it like that. And then we come in at the end, we're coming in at the end. So it actually is exciting for someone like me who's come in a bit later in the piece. And you can see that, yes, the fight is still there. There's still a fight there. But, I mean, it's kind of been easier for my crew who's coming through now. Not Tuhia on them, they've been there way longer. Same age, but been there for a longer period. But there's a few of us who are coming in now, and it's like, oh, what's been the problem? Because of the work that's been done before. So what I'm saying is it is good to see that in some instances, not in all, but in some instances, we are starting to see at least a conversation that's a happier conversation taking place in regards to mātauranga Māori and the fact that it is science. So if we can't, neither can compare to each other, both have their own function and both provide an outcome. What's that been like? Because you've been in there for some time, hammering it, and then there's people like me coming in like, oh, gee, yeah, I need to have 3 arguments today,
I'm excited. I'm totally excited by that, and I've only been there a decade. Then I think of back to, the Ayla Taylors, Uncle Ayla Taylor from Te Aotearoa back in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s, saying the same stuff. And I think back to how much opposition and resistance there was for them, which they broke down barriers, which then made it easier for those in the 90s and the 2000s. And then I came along in the next decade, so it's been, the conversations always have a degree of difficulty and a challenge, but at each stage, it just changes that the challenges change. So you're right, the challenge is still there, and there are still those 3 arguments for you to have, and next week there'll be another 3 arguments for you to have, but thankfully they won't be the same 3 arguments that they were having back in the 70s and 80s, and they're not the same arguments that I've had in the last 10 years. So I'm really excited, and I guess I come at the Three Waters reform with a whole different whakaaro to some of my colleagues, because I see the potential in this for all of those things we've been talking about, for Māori voices to be elevated, for cohesiveness across iwi and waka confederations, to have real impact and real impetus, so that people can't pick us off one iwi at a time and use it against, use it as a reason to paralyze progress, which is what happens all the time. And that, you fellas are coming through, and it's just like taking us forward, and I can't wait to retire, actually, because it's just awesome seeing the potential and the passion, but rooted in mātauranga Māori, whakaaro Māori, whakapapa Māori, and seeing where you fellas can take it next, and then handing it on and training up the next generation to succeed after that. So I feel like I'm right in the middle, and that the wave is rising, and I just feel energized and invigorated, and really frustrated when I meet people from my sector who don't get that, who don't share my vision, but it is what it is.
Who don't share my vision. Love it. And I also have to have a little chuckle at that. I feel like I'm ready to retire. Te whānau, she's studying a PhD. Like, I'm not quite sure when so she's done 2 masters, in art. Actually, we'll talk about this a little bit. And then she's going to the PhD. I love these Māori wahine who talk about retirement like it's like this thing that happens when you're 85 or something like that, because it's not going to be happening anytime soon. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Oh, okay. So just hang on. Better finish off that other kaupapa a bit better than we are right now, getting onto another tangent. But yeah, so essentially the three waters, I mean, that clears a lot up for me. I'm still naturally, like, oh, here we go. Is this going to be like an extra cost to the whānau? How are we going to get the funding? But you've spoken a bit about that. A lot of it, I understand it's probably going to happen. I'm so interested to see how this, how it's going to work out in regards to who all the māngai are. I'm just cannot wait to see what happens here, because it's such a huge catchment. However, to be fair, when you think about the structures that you're already, your chair person of the, sorry, I've forgotten the name.
Yeah, Te Maruata.
Te Maruata. So already, there you go. That's a collaboration of our people from different regions who are having to work together. And, if we look back, even as far as, like, I don't want to speak out of turn, but Te Kingitanga, we all have māngai. We all have māngai who contribute to these sorts of structures. So it's not so far out of the scope.
Tautoko. And I look to Te Pāti Māori and look at the far-ranging and far-reaching geographically, Te Toi Hauauru. That's a huge geographical area. But I think that's how I've sort of changed the way I look at politics. And this is all politics. And I never thought I'd grow up to be a politician. But it is about those voices and those personalities that you end up trusting, regardless of where they come from, regardless of who they whakapapa to. And, I've been really privileged to spend a lot of time with Minister Mahuta over the last few years, and I trust her intentions. And I see her diplomacy in formal settings, but I've also had really heart-to-heart conversations with her just sitting in a corner. And she's all about the people, and she's all about trying to make sure that Māori voices and interests are elevated to our rightful position. And for some of us as Māori, that we find that scary, because that's not what we're used to. And we're used to the fight, and we're used to being wary, and we're used to being suspicious, and that's good, because that's always, we should always be like that. But a bit more critical analysis of intentions, I think we forget to do sometimes, because we're so used to people not having our intentions at heart. So I really I think she's a wahine of integrity. I haven't seen anything in my engagement with her that would make me think, oh, I'm not too sure about that. There's lots of ways that this could turn out, but I know that always her intentions have been for my Māori as a whole, and it may not play out in the media that way, it may not play out amongst some of our people that way, but it's an interesting time, and it will be, just like you say, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this reform.
I mean, and not to simplify it too much, but it is about the pipes and the concrete. So
Three Waters is about
the day,
concrete.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, something has to happen in regards to the infrastructure.
Everyone agrees. There wouldn't be one council in the country who does not agree that change is needed, that something has to be done differently. But it's just like having 67 whānau members in the same room. You're never going to get everyone saying that the menu should look like this for the next 50 years. No one is going to agree to how that's going to be. So it's, it is the same. And councils have to look at it from what they think is best for their communities, just like any other whānau would do. And it's really going to be really difficult to try and come and find that common denominator and common ground, but everyone agrees that the status quo does not work, which is why assets have been underinvested, because people just haven't been able to afford it. Councils haven't been able to afford it. Yeah, koira.
So, okay, just one more thing. Another thing that just came to mind. So in regards to where it is right now, the reform and councils, what's the next steps? Like, is it going to get passed or what? Where we
so
at?
councils, from the middle of July to just a week or so ago, councils have had their 8-week period to have a look at the Crown model to assess it against their own assessments, and many councils have opted to have independent assessments of the models and the figures and stuff like that, which is awesome. You should always do your due diligence. And they have all provided, in the last week or so, provided feedback to the Crown about what they think of the reform. And a lot of them aren't happy with the feedback. Within their feedback, some of them have been quite critical. Some came out before they even had all the information to saying we're out of the process, we're not going to participate. So all of that will be being digested now by the Crown, and there will, I guess, be a response coming out hopefully before the end of the year as to what might happen next. But yeah, it is interesting. Like you said, you gave the great example. Councils have been saying to the local government sector has been saying to the Crown, we need your help, we need your help, we need your help, we need funding. Crown has said, okay, we will fund the work, but not perhaps the way you might have liked it to be funded, which makes sense. You know, if some people haven't done well with important infrastructure assets who need the pūtea, why then would the Crown just hand over pūtea to say, oh, here you go and fix it up? You know, so yeah, do you do that sort of thing? So it's swings and roundabouts. The other important point I forgot to make, Te Aorangi, is that if councils are put into these mega entities together, then all of the pūtea gets consolidated in the one place as well. So some councils are concerned about the fact that they may have invested a lot in their infrastructure and their pūtea will be paying for those that haven't, blah, 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 which I get. But for me, that also lacks manaakitanga a little bit, and it also is a bit short-sighted. And when people have asked me about this, I'm like, well, you know, where do you live and how's your council done? Oh, we've done this and we've done that. Okay, so does all of your whānau live in your rohe? Oh, no, well, I've got a daughter over here or grandkids there. Like, so wouldn't you want to make sure that their drinking water's okay? Oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. Oh, where do you go on holiday? Do you go to your local beach or do you go up to the Coromandel or go down south or something? Oh, I'm like, well, don't you want there to be safe drinking water when you go there for their communities?
Yeah.
So just trying to get people to not be so, it's all about me and my rohe. How do we manaaki Aotearoa as a whole?
Wow, there you go. You haven't quite swung me, but you nearly got me right there, BB. Nah.
I don't want to swing anybody. Asking critical questions is key. But I just wanted to help our whānau, because you're right, there's a ton of information out there. There's also a ton of misinformation and misdirection and red herrings.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's all good information. And as I said, whānau, to those of you who are listening in or watching right now, like, she's actually working in it. Bonita is. So, you know, it's not just like me reading every now and then getting racked up about something else I see. Got to get the people in who know what they're talking about, whānau, to give us some actual context to what's going on. Now, but before we close off, I just want to talk really quickly, because that's not the only thing that Bonita does around the place in her spare time, e te whānau, no. She's been like probably the main driver down here in the south in regards to getting Maori art, I guess, to getting our young everybody. I mean, honestly, whānau, we're all artists apparently.
Absolutely.
She has created a pathway and an opportunity for people to get creative, I guess. And so we've seen a few art exhibitions pop up, and some of us have thrown our hat in the ring, and we've contributed to these art exhibitions. I think our youngest artist was Mahuki, was it? And
it was 3 when she first exhibited.
There you go. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Bibi? The idea, absolutely. The vision.
Sure. Well, it really, for me, mahitoi, and especially mahitoi Māori, is my rongoa. And being Mental Health Awareness Week, it's really important that I acknowledge my ongoing battle with depression. Diagnosed nearly 20 years ago with chronic depression as my first real understanding of what the hell was wrong with me, and realizing that I'd had depressive episodes my whole adult life. So that was interesting. So coming to life through mahitoi Māori and working with Phil and Puhi and Ria back in the day when Te Wānanga o Raukawa had a course that was running at Taiporohe Nui, that's what saved my life, really, and it's still my go-to and my my rongoa for not only the times I'm down, it's just what I always want to do when I'm not in a meeting. So it's been an awesome part of my life, and I just think, like you said, everyone's an artist, and it doesn't matter whether it's drawing stick figures in a cartoon strip, or creating movies, or doing all the whakairo for a whare. It's irrelevant. There's a creative element in all of us that, if it brings joy, and if it brings happiness, and if it's an outlet that makes you feel joyful, then do it. Don't care what it is, do it. So it was actually Gabe Bells, who's the brains behind the Pātea Gallery. She sort of got a few of us together a few years ago, and it was myself, Kararaina Te Ira, who was then the Hautiaki Tonga for Pukeariki, and Wharehoka Smith. And so Gabe, myself, Kararaina and Wharehoka all met and said, how do we start creating opportunities for our people? And we made up our little collective, Toi Taranaki ki Te Tonga. And at that stage, we framed it to get pūtea from the Creative Communities scheme in South Taranaki District Council. So we talked about it being a South Taranaki project, but we knew that wasn't shutting anyone out, because everyone's got whakapapa te pariaka. So we knew that was the way for everyone to be involved. And we've just really enjoyed. Kararaina's moved on, and Wharehoka's been busy with his own projects, but Gabe and I have really enjoyed creating those opportunities for people to be involved, and to just come and to just sit and talk and listen and things like that. So we're looking forward to hopefully taking that to the next level in the next year or so, but continuing to have opportunities for people to be together, to be in a creative environment with no pressure other than to sit, eat, talk and laugh, if that's all they want to do. Create what they want to create, and also booking in spaces with galleries to show people's work. So that's our passion, that's our driver, and that's what we hope to continue to be able to do for all of us. Beginning artists, emerging artists, established artists, or famous artists. We're all in there together.
Yeah, very exciting and awesome for the kids too, because I was thinking back to when I was a kid. I never went to an art exhibition. It was never on anyone who I knew on their radar. And then just to think that my kids have been to heaps in their short time, contributed, actually had pieces in there themselves, surprised me. Walking into that last one and seeing Paido's hair key on the wall, I was like, what? He didn't even tell me. But obviously you've completed 2 master's degrees. Is that what they're called? 2 master's degrees. Can you talk to us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, sure. It actually started out with a certificate in creative technologies, as it was called then, at WIT back in 2014, I think, because I realised I hadn't done anything formal, or I hadn't expanded my artistic learning for a long time. So I got all nervous and rocked up to class with all these 18 and 19-year-olds, and really enjoyed that time, and had an awesome year, learned lots of awesome stuff from a lot of tutors. Donna Willard Moore was really instrumental. She's actually a Native American wahine. She's got whakapapa there. Cool. She was tutoring at the time. So that kicked that off, and I stayed at WIT the next year and had some fun with BJ Hettit, ngā mihi kiaia tonu. And then saw advertised that Massey were offering the Masters in Fine Arts distance. And I thought I'd just be cheeky and throw my hat in the ring, because I'd always, for the previous 10 years, I'd been exhibiting and selling work to buy basketball boots for today, etc., etc. And yeah, I was really lucky enough to be accepted onto that program, which was fantastic. So that took me 3 years, and I did that part-time, and was awesomely and wonderfully blessed by having Rachel Rakina as one of my supervisors.
Yes.
And Eugene Hansen. So they were my co-supervisors. Really, really excited. So yeah, got the Masters of Fine Arts, and while finishing that, realised and found out that I could do the Masters in Māori Visual Arts distance as well, because I thought I had to move to Palmy to do that. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. And everyone was saying, what do you want to do another Masters for? I said, because I want to hang out in the Māori art space. That's just so awesome. Lucky enough to have Kura Te Warurewiri as my supervisor. So I've just loved my arts journey, and it's about those awesome people who I'm coming into contact with through that. And turned into a bit of a study junkie. Last year I worked with Kim doing the Raranga program through Te Wānanga Aotearoa as well. So being with a awesome, whanaunga and Ngāru Ahine, she's so amazing. Yeah, so it's just, I just feel like I'm in the right space when I'm doing something mahitoi.
Yeah, and then you're going on to do your PhD.
Yes, that's the theory. So I've been... what do you call it? I got an offer of place at Massey to do that, start that PhD journey. So I think you get like 6 months to frame everything up, and then you've got to pitch again to the university, and then they decide whether or not you're going to be in that space. So Hannah Smith, who is the head of school for the College of Creative Arts, another awesome artist, Wahine Toa, has agreed to be my supervisor, and Bob Younker as well as co-supervisor. So I'm blown away. I'm just really grateful that these awesome people see some value, hopefully, in poking me along and prodding me when I need the poke and the prod.
Well, we see the value in it. BB, selfishly, of course, we're going to ride those coattails of yours, and our tamariki are going to benefit from your mātauranga. So, yeah, sorry, no pressure or anything like that. We total for you. Everything you're doing.
It's all about succession, it's all about, and I say to the tamariki, don't wait to crash and burn like I did before you realise that you need to value and honour and make true your creative selves. And like I said, it doesn't matter what it is, if it brings you joy, then keep on doing it. Don't care if it's tap dancing or tāniko, just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's about honouring yourself. So yeah, those tamariki coming through, they're my succession plan as well.
And what a great plan to have. Nā reira, e te tuakana e mihi ki koe, kua puta mai koe I te pō, ki te ao mārama, mai I tō mahitoi, and ka whai tātou I a koe. What else can we do? It's not always a choice. I feel, when you get those random emails saying, look what we're up to. Everyone's like,
stay tuned. Yes, we are. Yes. Oh, can I just say, and this will be the first place I'll announce it, because I haven't yet put the post up anywhere. But on I think it's the 4th, hold on, let me check my date. On the 4th of December, if it's Saturday the 4th, Saturday the 4th of December, Toi Taranaki ki Te Tonga and Te Korowai o Ngāru Ahine invites all our Taranaki Māori artists who want to come and sell their mahi at a Toi Māori market. We're going to have that at Te Korowai there in Te Hāwera on Saturday, the 4th of December. So anyone who wants to know more, just get through to me or Te Aorangi, who will put you through to me, and we'll make sure that you're got all the information to that, selling to our, our wider whānau and to the public, your awesome mahi. 100% profits go back to you, no cut anywhere. It's not about making money for anyone but yourselves. Christmas shopping for the whānau.
Awesome, that's good. I've already got my eye on something that I want to buy too. Nā reira, anō nei ngā mihi ki koe, Bibi, ko whai wā koe ki te noho tahi ki ahau o tira ki te marea e whakarongo mai, e mātaki mai ana hoki. Nā ki koutou rā, e noho ana ki o koutou koinga, koutou o tāmaki makaurau, ko nei ngā mihi nui ki koutou o tira, ki koutou hoki o kirikiri roa, taua takiwa o Waikato I tēnei wā. Ko pātu te mate uruta ki koutou hoki, noho haumaru, noho moho au ki o koutou koinga, e te iwi, hei konei, hei kona, tūrau, Hawaii.
Mauri ora.